What's up guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be having a look at Trap versus Reynor from Blizzcon. This was game number 2 in their round of 8. Reynor won game number 1 on Thunderbird. And I thought this was one of the more interesting games that was played last Blizzcon, including a Protoss. So let's jump right into it. So on the bottom right we have Trap, who is currently down 1-0. And top left we have Reynor, who won the last game on Thunderbird. Now we're not gonna exactly cast this, we're just gonna go over what the players do exactly, what their mistakes were, what their good plays were, a little bit of analysis on the openings, and at the end of the ride I hope everyone is a little more knowledgeable about why the player that won this game and why the player that lost this game lost the game. So let's go into it. We see Trap starting with a very standard Gateway Scout. A lot of the Korean players this BlizzCon played Gateway Scout almost every single time. Now there's 3 types of Scout really that there are. You got your Pylon Scout that can block the natural of the Zerg. You got your Gateway Scout and you got No Scout or Cybercore Scout. No Scout and Cybercore Scout are very closely related as they save you a lot of money and both of them die against 12 pool. Gateway Scout is the safest one of all of them. You get slightly more minerals, but you won't be able to do any damage to the Zerg. So this is usually what you play if you feel like you're better than your opponent or you feel confident in your opening. You'll play Gateway Scout, or if you just want to go into a standard game, no shenanigans. It's the safest way to open. Reynor just opened with a standard 16 hatch. Nothing too crazy there from him. You do see a Stargate opener here for Trap, which is the most common opener in PvZ at the moment, as it gives you very reliable scouting. It maybe allows you to do some damage on drones if Zerg isn't paying attention, and it also gives some extra safety, helps with taking a faster third base in case of Zergling floods. It's very strong against Ravagers, targeting those down, and if you get a Phoenix you can kill overlords that are floating around the map and giving the Zerg information. So it gives you information and also denies information from your opponent, which is always a good thing, of course. Now we see double Adept opener, usually indicates that a Phoenix will be made. Back in the day I would say Adept means straight into Phoenix, but nowadays a lot of Protosses like to open Adept, then get an Oracle for the early damage in combination with the Adepts, and then get a Phoenix after. The reason why I say you want to get a Phoenix if you open Adept is because you won't have anything to kill Overlords. There's no Stalker. Most of the time when people open Adept Stalker, their first Stargate unit is an Oracle, and most of the time they don't build a Phoenix at all. So we do see Trap actually opening up with a Phoenix first, which is a very old school way to play. Just getting that Phoenix when you play Adept makes a lot of sense. We'll be able to clear this Overlord, and Reynor will need to build 2 Overlords rather than just the one that he was building before. Now 2 Adepts making their way across the map, but they hit so late that speed is basically finished already. As you see, it's finishing in 1 second, so they shouldn't be able to do too much. I'm a little bit surprised he finishes this. If you look at Trap's setup at home, you see he doesn't have a 3rd unit building, which means if these 2 Adepts get cleared up, he will need to wall this, or he'll need to chrono boost the 3rd unit, or maybe even both at the same time, which is a little bit annoying. It costs some money, and unless you do a lot of damage with these 2 Adepts, it's not really worth it. And he saw that there was 10 links in position, so I don't think he should have finished that. 2 Adepts for 2 drones is not a very worthwhile trade. Unit loss still looks relatively even, but yeah, this forces Trap to completely wall off. He'll wait for Warp Gate with warping in a unit, but this is not exactly how you want to start the game. It also makes taking your 3rd a lot harder as you don't have any gateway units remaining for now, so you need to spend a little more money on that than you ideally want to. Now, worst case scenario is that you need to finish this battery as well, because then that's basically a lost 100 minerals, which you'll need to cancel eventually, or you'll need to kill eventually actually. You just get the cancel in, let some Zerglings into the main base. So Scout here for Reynor doesn't see anything out of the ordinary, just a Stargate. He did see the robotics facility go on in a natural. Meanwhile, we have Trap trying to do some damage with these 2 Oracles. So far, rather unsuccessful. As you see, both Oracles still have 0 kills. Now this is a good area to do damage. The problem with heading into a natural is that if queens are into position, you can kind of get caught over here and there's nowhere to fly. You can't go here because queens position themselves here, and you can't go up because a queen can position itself here. So a lot of the time when you go too deep into naturals, you'll lose one oracle. So sometimes it's worth it if you can get 7-8 workers, but a lot of the time you get 3 to 5 workers, and losing an oracle for that isn't really worth it. So let's see what Trap does. Also note Reynor's interesting spore position, really trying to zone out this area and forcing the oracles to go here closer towards that third base where the 2 extra queens are. Now I would not suggest this for low level Zerg players because you need to be very aware of queen movement. If your queens are out of position over here as he flies in, you probably just lose 10 workers and he'll fly out like this again. So Reynor is very convinced in his ability to move the queens in the correct way and not idle with them for too long. And this actually worked out okay for Reynor. As I said, he will be able to push these oracles up to the top, and there's another queen, even 2 more queens, which should be able to clear at least 1 oracle. As Trap will realize that there's no way out. 4 drones for 1 oracle and a recall force is a good deal for Trap, or is a good deal for Reynor, sorry. So early game so far looking very good for Reynor, who continues droning up. Starts his lair, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a Roach Warren start after the Evo chamber. Most of the time you'll see Proluses after they open Oracle Phoenix follow up with a 4-gate or a 6-gate push from Robo, and in that case you do want a Roach run, so we see Reynor with the Roach run. It's a little bit late, but should still be in time. Now, what Trap is doing here, he's showing 4 sentries to Reynor, and he's showing a move out. Reynor is blissfully unaware of what is behind this push. He doesn't know if a prism is being rallied. I mean, there could be a prism being built here right now. He doesn't know if it's 6-gate without any tech or if it's 2-gate with tech like it is right now. So this push will force out units and will force a drone cut from Reynor, who's getting a forward base and would ideally be going up to 75, 76 workers already. So this is a fake move out. Which is relatively safe because there's still oracles on the map. There's good scouting with hallucinations, so Trap is aware of how many units there are. Right now Reynor just got the confirmation that there is a Forge and a Twilight, and as a response he throws down a Spire immediately. Trap returns back after forcing a bunch of Roaches, a bunch of Links that Reynor ideally didn't want to make, and now we see drone production continue again from Reynor. Phoenix just making sure no overlords can come in here. Trap is now aware of this forward base and actually loses an oracle, which means he now has no oracles left. That's kind of annoying, especially against stuff like Ravager pushes or against compositions that don't consist of anti-air. It's very nice to have oracles. Of course, they also provide great map vision with their revelation, defensive abilities with their stasis wards. And he won't have any of that right now. We see Trap go up to a higher gateway count. He went Forged Twilight, relatively late 5th and 6th gas, but it scared Reynor a little bit. He got his drones a little later, but now Reynor is at the count that he wants to be at. And his Spire is close to finishing, and we see Reynor is opting for a Ravager Ling Bane or Roach Ling Bane into Muda, most likely into Hive afterwards for Broodlords. And the goal with this is to get your Broodlords out before a push that can kill you hit. Ravager Ling Bane kind of has a expiration date, where the moment the Pearl hits 180, 190 supply with +2 upgrades and 5-6 Templar with Storms, your army's just gonna die. By that time, ideally, you have Broodlords out, or you try to trade before it to keep the gas unit count of the Protoss rather low. Now, what Trap wants to do is he wants to get this forward base up, get 8 gases as fast as possible so he can really start adding a couple of more gateways and start working on those gas units. Now, Trap did scout a Spire, and after seeing that starts a second Phoenix. He already has 1 Phoenix done. Starts a cannon in, I guess, every mineral line. Yeah, he already has one here. So yeah, in every mineral line. This is just for safety, and it means that if your Phoenixes are out of position, your cannon still will be able to hold the mineral line for a little bit. Trap sees with those observers a couple of mutas flying by. He sees at least a 7th gas, no 8 gas yet. And I would love Trap to put this observer into the main base to spot for the lair. He's not doing that yet, but it would be nice. Because the moment you don't see a lair yet, at a time like this, 8:15, 8:30, no lair, you kind of know as a pro, hey wait, this is weird. Maybe I'm being attacked, maybe I'm being busted. He's already aware of the muta, but he doesn't really know what the follow-up is. Is it going to be very fast tech to hive, or is it going to be a push first with perhaps baneling speed and road speed on the way? These are the kind of things that you do want to know, and Trap is a little bit unaware. Now, first mutas coming in, Trap is dealing with this fine. Puts 2 Archons in a prison, and with the 2 Phoenixes, these 9 mutas are basically wasted money for Reynor at this point. They might be able to get a couple of workers, but with good micro, this shouldn't do as much as it costs. He does get a Phoenix there for free, which is pretty nice. Couple more workers going down as well, but not the end of the world for Trap. This is the real important point for now. We see a Ravager, well, a Roachling Bane push, basically. Couple of links in there as well with +1 and Baneling speed. And ideally you'd have Storm against this. If you have 2-3 Storms here, Banelings of Creep, they don't deal too well with Storm. They would just die, this push would be completely over. However, we say there's 2 Templar on the map right now, and only one of them has energy, and the one that has energy is at the 3rd phase, and is not being controlled by Trap at the moment. Mutas come to join the fight as well, and this actually looks like a very scary fight. These are some decent force fields. A little bit of a mistake there, so the Banelings do roll in. Storm does not go off before the Templar dies, and now it's looking like a very dire situation. Trap's gonna need to micro his little heart out to be able to hold this 4th phase, which ideally he'd already be mining the 7 and 8 gas, because like I said, he really wants those heavy gas units to force something out before Brood Lords are out. Now, mutas are getting cleaned up, and this army looks to be cleaned up eventually as well, as we see a big warp in, 1 more Immortal joining the fight. However, in that fight, we see an even units loss step, and in this case, that's very advantageous for the Zerg, as we see the Zerg is already on 8 gases. Zerg is getting the hive, and he wants, like I said, he wants to trade out units while being on superior economy and attacking to Brood Lords. So basically what Reynor did, he just delayed the push out from Trap. He's like, you know what, I don't care if we're trading even, that's completely fine for me because I'm getting better units in a minute or 2, and you should not be able to push across the map with 130 supply. And Reynor's completely right about that, of course. Trap needs extra Templars, he needs extra Archons to join this army, and he definitely needs those 7 and 8 gas. One of the things that is a little bit lacking for Reynor at the moment is the creep spread. His map vision is okay, he's lacking some vision in this area. Perhaps a unit at this tower would not hurt too much, but his creep spread really is rather mediocre this game. Which means that any defensive fight will be a lot harder to fight on creep, because the moment Trap walks up here, he'll be able to clear those tumors with an observer, and then this ramp is basically Trap's area. So it's something that Reynor should keep in mind in this game, is that especially when playing Baneling styles, when you use Banelings for defense, creep is extremely important to help with those defensive fights before you get Brood Lords out. Now, Trap realizing even though I've been saying that Reynor is the guy that needs to win time, at this point, for the next 20-30 seconds, while these Templar are gaining energy, Trap is actually the one that needs to gain time, as he has nothing to deal with Banelings at this moment. So he sends out a Prism, and he will try to send it around most likely, as he also killed all the mutas, so harass is now possible. To try and distract Reynor from making another big push into his 4th base. See a Baneling run-by going towards the 3rd as well. +2 is almost done. Once +2 is done for melee attacks, Banelings will be able to one-shot probes. So that's always a very big upgrade. I really like the consistency at which Reynor uses these Baneling run-bys as well to try and clear mineral line. Very difficult to play against it, especially in such a hectic game. If you take a look at Trap's map vision, it's very, very little. He has no vision here, he has no vision here, he has no vision here. He's still unaware of whether there's a hive or not. The last time he saw the hatchery in the main, it was still transitioning into a layer. So He doesn't really know if he has a timing, but he's guessing that he doesn't, as he's throwing down a fleet beacon right now. Usually if people get a timing, instead of getting a fleet beacon, you'll see them get blink in case a couple of Broodlords show up towards the end of their fight. But fleet beacon is like, alright, you managed to survive 2 Broodlords. Now I'll have to build either Tempest or Carriers. We got another Baneling run-by, I guess. Being set up. 5 more. So this is a double-pronged attack with some pressure at the front. Now, the pressure at the front is basically fake. This is the kind of push. I mean, this is never gonna kill Trap. The thing that this push does, however, is distract Trap from the Baneling run-bys. And Reynor will gladly pay a couple of links for that. So he just lost 10 links here, but meanwhile he tried to go in here, Trap with quick responses, and he tried to go in here at the same time as well. Once again, Trap with quick responses manages to pull away all of his probes, and these 2 Banelings won't be able to get to the probes. 5 probes lost for those 2 big run-bys, a very good deal for Trap. Now, I'm not a massive fan of this move. There's not a lot here to win for Reynor. He should be focused on spreading creep and perhaps setting up new run-bys. One on the bottom side, one on the right, and then try to go again in the middle. But this kind of fight, I mean, you can't really win it. There's 4 immortals. Every time these immortals shoot, 1 or 2 units die, and there's storms as well. So in that case, you're just bleeding out units. Now, for Trap, we see a mothership on the way, as well as another Stargate. So he will be transitioning into the early phases of the late game. 2 more run-bys are being set up for Reynor. However, this is only links, and only link run-bys are not that useful. This is the better kind of run-by where there's Banelings involved. Reynor's transition into Greater Spire is a little bit slow, I have to admit, but he's been doing so many good things on the side that it doesn't really matter. Trap really feels like there's no way he can ever push out on the map. His Archon count is abysmal. He's already transitioning into Tempest, and when you start Tempest, your goal is to kill your opponent while they're still in Broodlord, and they don't have a big count of infestors yet. There's no spore wall. You kind of do it as a, I don't want to call it an all-in army, but it's not an army that will survive against 25 to 30 infestors. It's going to be very difficult to play against that. So we'll see Trap probably add in a bunch of Archons, 4 or 5 Archons with this army, perhaps research Blink, and from there on out he'll make a push across the map once he's maxed. I can only imagine. Another run-by being set up by Reynor. We'll be trying to go for this 3rd bait, realize there's nothing to get there. Like I mentioned earlier, these kind of run-bys, they never really do too much. Just pure links, you know there's a lot of batteries, you know there's a lot of cannons. Hell, there's even an Archon at this point. It's better to send in Banelings, and Reynor once again attempts it over there. Wouldn't be surprised to see these guys morph in Banelings as well. There we go. And a couple of these perhaps in Banelings as well, Reynor. It's so necessary that you use Banelings, because even if Banelings die, they'll be able to take down cannons, and every time you clear cannons, your next run-by should be able to do more damage. This run-by should be able to do a lot, as we see Trap is finally moving out. So if we take a look at the game state right now, we have about 6 Broodlords, which is rather low, and then 17 Banelings, which also isn't too high, but there's almost no Archons in this army, so it's gonna be rather scary for Trap to push out, and we'll see how it goes. The thing that Trap will need to do is he'll need to focus down these Broodlords with the Tempest before the Tempest die. That's the goal with Tempest. The goal with Tempest isn't to shoot at Ravagers, it's to clear Broodlords and then fight with a ground army against a ground army, in which case the Protoss has a better ground army. But while I was talking about that, I missed a run-by, which killed a lot of workers. So this is a very important run-by, like I mentioned before. You see cannons are placed at the front to deal with a frontal push, and I think on this map it might be wise to actually build a gate wall in this area, because this is such a common occurrence and it's very difficult to deal with. So you see 16 probes going down to those +2 Banelings. Big Ling run-by going into the main base as well, but there's still a cannon there. Same in the natural, so that shouldn't be able to do too much. But right now Trap is only on 56 workers while pushing out of the map. One thing I don't like that Trap is lacking is that there's no Oracle yet with this army. He is building one, but if you get Tempest, you really need an Oracle to tag the Broodlord and utilize the range of these Tempests. See a couple of Corruptors being built right now, as well as a couple of Infestors added. This fight so far has been looking pretty okay for Reynor. Spores, of course, helping out as well. detecting all the units that otherwise would be invisible under the mothership. In this case though, against Brute Lords, a lot of the time it's a mistake to focus too much on really killing the Tempest, because the Tempest's only goal is to take out the Brute Lords. They don't really care too much about surviving after that is done. So it is usually better to play pure Brute Lord Infestor rather than go into Brute Lord Corruptor, because Corruptors, the only task they have is to kill the Tempest. So unless you're very sure you can kill Tempest quick enough that they can't take out the Brute Lords, most of the time it's just better to get more Brute Lords, so you're better off fighting with the ground army, and then just start adding more and more Infestors and play pure Infestor Brute Lord from there, as Infestors are fantastic at dealing with Tempest as well. And then later on, as you're getting max, getting rid of your poor ground units, then you can start adding in Corruptors. But what can happen now is if all your Brutes get sniped, is that you'll have a very difficult time at the ground fight. And we see Trap moving forward rather aggressively. Oracle is here as well, and with the vision of the tower, he's actually able to target down these Brute Lords very quickly, as you can see. And there's only 4 Brute Lords left, and 4 Brute Lords take a very long time to kill this massive ground army that Trap has amassed. So you see these Corruptors, for sure they're working on these Tempests, but the Tempest just right click on these Brute Lords and will take all of them down, and then they die, which is nice. But at this point, if we take a look at the army, we see 9 Corruptors, 4 Infestors and 3 Banelings out against 14 Zealots, 3 Immortals and 3 Archons. This was a mistake by Reynor. He tried to transition into a full-on late game too fast, but all he truly needed to do was survive, as, I mean, Trap still has Immortals in his army, which means he's basically just hoping for a bust. He's not looking to prolong this game, and this is something that Reynor failed to realize, and now he will pay a heavy price for it, as he has no units left. The one upside of having those Corruptors is that a Prism can survive close to the army, which means that all reinforcements will need to come from far. Now, in this case, what will happen as Trap is that you will never be able to kill the Zerg. This is just, everyone that is Tols and played the situation knows that. What's gonna happen, he'll more 4 or 5 Brute Lords, and as you don't have any anti-air left, you won't be able to deal with them. So what you need to do is you have about a 30 to 40 second window where you need to do as much damage as possible. I think Trap is doing that well, clearing out this base, and now ideally we'd see some run-bys towards this base and this base. If he can kill 20-30 workers, he's gonna be up in army, or he's gonna be up in economy, and it's gonna take a very, very long time for Reynor to rebuild all those workers, because he has almost no bank and his income will be very low. Instead, what Trap decides to do is he'll decide to fight reinforcements, which is fine if you have a prison and you can warp in 10 Blink Stalkers to jump under these low counts of Brute Lords, but he simply doesn't have any anti-air, which now means that he's just gonna die out eventually against this basically 2-3 Brute Lords, because Broodlings will not allow these Archons to get under the Brute Lords. We see a recall just before the Greater Spire dies, which also wasn't the greatest call, but I understand why he felt like he needed to get out of there. Every second he would stay there longer would mean that he would keep bleeding out more and more units. But the real mistake was not attacking this base, not attacking this base, running away from the Brute Lord morph towards actual targets that Reynor has that were basically free of any defense whatsoever. I mean, couple of Spines don't do a lot if you have 3 Immortals in your army. 8-9 Zealots, just take care of drones real fast. And this game would be massively in favor of Trap after a move like that. Luckily for Reynor, he decided not to do that, and even though that fight was bad for Reynor, he now is in a pretty good position. Like, the initial fight was bad, but because Trap's follow-up was so weak to it, we now have a Reynor that is on more Brute Lords than before the fight. He has a nice Infestor count, he has a Viper as well, and basically Reynor right now is stable going into the late game. He can start adding Spores, he has a good worker count, he can start adding more Infestors and trying to get rid of the Roaches. Trap, on the other hand, has a worse army than he had before the fight. He basically got reset. Tempests are gone, Mothership had to be rebuilt, and rebuilding Tempest into someone that has Infestor Brute Lord usually is something I would not recommend. There's not a lot of things I can recommend against this, but Tempests are something that I definitely do not recommend. Perhaps a couple of carriers are more useful. Trap is trying to get some damage on with these DTs. We'll be able to snipe this Greater Spire, I do believe. And let's get a couple of workers down here as well. So No more Brood Lords for now. There is already another Spire on the way, which is researching +2, so that should definitely turn into a greater Spire once that finishes. So Reynor can rebuild his Brood Lords if they die. Neural Parasite on the way. Trap once again with this very weird army that doesn't seem to do a lot against what Reynor has. He's gonna need an absolutely miraculous fight to be able to get a winning fight here. Now, I like that Reynor keeps a part of his army for run-bys and dealing with Zealot run-bys, but I think the roach count is too high, and I think a couple of Banelings, even if it's just 5 or 6, help so much, both against cannons and defensive or aggressive Zealot warp-in, so I would have loved to see that, but he's still dealing with this well. He has some power for run-bys, but if you add 6-7 Banelings here, you're absolutely gonna destroy this, and you're playing against a 4-base trap all of a sudden. Now, with 4 cannons, a couple of Zealots, I think this is barely not gonna be enough. Actually, this is gonna be enough as he kills the pylon, but one more Warpin deals with it rather easily, and he won't be able to kill any of the probes. 2-3 Banelings there would have helped so much. At the same time as that run-by, we see Trap trying to make a very weird play, which we really rarely see. He recalls into the main base of the opponent, and he'll try to stay above the ramp and stop the infestors from really going up, which this is a play that we used to do in Wings of Liberty. However, what happens is the Viper pulls the mothership while he's recalling, and recalled units don't die if they get recalled above a high ground or a cliff. What happens is they just spawn in the closest possible location. So you see a couple of units spawning here, 1 Archon here, a couple of units here, and this is actually really good for Trap, as he just spawns straight on top of the Brood Lords and managed to kill all of the Brood Lords, and all of a sudden a basically unlosable game for Reynor turns into, well, honestly a really good game for Trap, or at least probably the greatest fight he ever could have hoped for. Now, Reynor's dropping quickly in supply. There still is a prism with this army as well. Sadly for Trap, his 5th base just died. He lost 18 workers. His bank is non-existent. If at this point Trap could warp in 10 Zealots in the main base of Reynor, I think this game is 100% over. However, Reynor has a couple of infestors left, managed to neural these Archons, and he also can reinforce. He has 1k, 3k in the bank. He doesn't have any larva left, so he'll need to start injecting again, but all of a sudden this game is a lot closer than Reynor would have liked. He's still in an okay position, even though that fight went probably as poor as it could have been, and he lost a lot of workers. The one thing, the saving grace for Reynor is that he has a bank, and this kind of fight once again is just gonna bleed out without any reinforcements, as you see more Ravagers are on the way, more Lynx, more Roaches, more Infestors in production, and Lynx with adrenal glands truly do not mess about. Trap tries his best, but even after getting the fight of a lifetime, he will most likely need to concede, as he has no 5th base, his income is basically non-existent, and the moment Reynor starts rebuilding those drones, saturating bases, and he'll need to take 1 extra base, so yeah, there we go, he'll get an income that's maybe 2 times the amount of what Trap has. I really like this play by Reynor, realizing that as long as there's no 5th base, there's no way in hell that Trap is ever rebuilding that army, so he'll just go back and he's like, okay, there's no 5th base, all I need to do at this point is defend. Builds more infestors. I wouldn't mind even seeing some more Ravagers being built, as he still has some gas, or adding maybe 10-12 Banelings in this army, but I mean, it's completely over. It's 110 army supply against 24, and Trap calls GG. So, a very interesting game. I think it's one of the best games that was played at Blizzcon, which was very fun to watch for me, and I hope you all learned something. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and see you boys next time, I guess. Love you all. Bye bye.